We talked through how to name angles, and we talked through a formal definition of the triangle angle sum theorem. Now we're going to open up and we're going to try to start writing and solving some equations to find missing values. So number 1 says write and solve an equation to find the value of x. Here's x. What is the angle relationship between these two? How do you know? What does this mean? And then it says write and solve an equation and answer using x equals. So what is the angle relationship between these two? Well, these two here shown are vertical angles. How do we know they're across from each other? And what does this mean? They're not only across from each other, but they're equal. So if I wanted to write and solve an equation, I would say that 133 is equal to x minus 2. And then to solve, I use inverse operations. The inverse of subtracting 2 is adding to 2. And if I do it to one side of the equal sign, then I must do it to the other to keep things balanced. 133 plus 2 is 135 is equal to x. And so our answer is x equals 135. Example number 2, write and solve an equation for the value of y. What is the angle relationship between these two? How do you know, and what does this mean? Well, when two lines intersect, the angles that are across from one another are called vertical angles. So these are vertical angles because they're across from each other. What does this mean? They're also equal. So they're across from each other and equal or congruent. So our equation for this one, we're saying that these two things are equal. 2y plus 5 is equal to 105. And then to find the value of y, I'm just going to use inverse operation. So the inverse of add is subtract 5 from both sides. When I do that, 5 minus 5 is 0, so those cancel, and I'm left with 2y. 105 minus 5 is 100. And then the inverse of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. I'm going to divide both sides by 2, and when I do that, y is equal to 100 divided by 2 is 50. And so my value of y here is 50. If I plug that back in, 2 times 50 is 100. 100 plus 5 is 105. Does it make sense that this angle measure is 105 degrees if this one is also 105 degrees? It does, so our answer makes sense, or it checks. So there is a way to check your answers. So all you have to do is plug it back in, just like we do with other solving equations. Now we're going to bounce down to the bottom where we've got examples 3 and 4. Examples 3 and 4 showed two angles that are adjacent, they share a common side, and are complementary because they equal 90 degrees. And you know that by looking at the little angled marker, the little square in those two angles. So for this very first one, to find the value of x, what's the angle relationship here? These angles are complementary. We know because of the little 90-degree square mark. And what does this mean about the angles? Their sum is 90 degrees. So sum means add. That means that 72 plus 3x plus 3 is equal to 90. Both of these angle measures add together to be 90, so I'm just going to add them all together with my plus signs. I'm going to add my two constants first, 72 and 3. Those are both like terms. They have the same variable and the same exponent. There is no variable and their exponent is 1. So 72 plus 3 is 75. So 3x plus 75 is equal to 90. Then I can isolate my variable term by using inverse operations. The inverse of adding 75 is subtracting 75. And if I do it to one side of the equal sign, I must do it to the other to keep things balanced. And then the inverse of multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3, so I'm going to divide both sides by 3 now. And when I do that, x equals 15 divided by 3, which is 5. And so my answer here is x equals 5. If I plug that back in, 3 times 5 is 15. 15 plus 3 is 18, or no, yeah, is 18. Do 18 and 72 have a sum of 90? And if they do, then our answer checks. It makes sense. So at this point, I would challenge you to pause the video and try example 4 on your own, and then unpause to see how you did. Okay, so hopefully you're checking your answer. The relationship here, just like the previous one, the relationship is complementary angles. How do we know that they're complementary angles? By the little square. And what does this mean? Their sum is 90 degrees. All of that is the same from before. So to write and solve an equation, we're going to add these two angle measures and then say that they're equal. Means equal. So x over 3 plus 1 plus 62 is equal to 90. I'm going to add my constants, 1 and 62. These are the like terms here. 1 and 62, which is 63. X over 3 plus 63 is equal to 90. The inverse of adding is subtracting, so I'm going to subtract 63 from both sides. When I do that, I get x over 3 is equal to 27. And then the inverse of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. Here's where you may need to pull out a calculator to help you. 27 times 3 is equal to 81. And so x here is equal to 81. These 3's cancel out. I'm left with just x is equal to 27 times 3, which is 81. And you might be saying, well, this can't be 81, but remember that we're plugging 81 in for x. We would do 81 divided by 3 is 27, plus 1 is 28. So this angle measure would be 28 degrees. Is 62 plus 28 90? It sure is, and so we know that our answer makes sense and checks.